All right, welcome to the Fed Up Podcast again. We are back. I'm here with Jordan. What's up, dude?
Yes, sir. My man.
Right. So, after talking about significance last week, we were like, hell, let's just talk about pain and like what that means. And
that makes sense.
Yeah, it's something where it's one of those things that all of us deal with. It's out there. We get really good at finding ways not to feel it, but hell, we don't really even understand what pain is or what that even means. So I thought we'd start there, man. So what is pain? What is it on a fundamental level? I mean, I understand if I pricked my finger here, that my body would go, oh, dude, you just hurt yourself. You need to stop and check it out. Make sure you don't keep going, right? So you don't get an infection, right? Basically, it's this warning sign our body has set up saying like, hey, hit the brakes, man. Hit the brakes. Something just happened. You got to check it out, right? It doesn't mean you have to stop, but it means you at least got to acknowledge that little blinking light on your dash. So on a basic level, I feel like that's what pain is, right? So what do you feel? What do you feel like pain is if you look at it and you want to take it to the next place? So like we all deal with pain. There's also this thing called suffering, right? Where you look at suffering and how so many different lifestyles are dedicated to ending suffering or learning to embrace it in a way where we're not scared of it anymore.
Suffering is it's the IV bag of accumulated painful moments dripping slowly, and you don't know how to get that needle out of your arm, and you're just taking it like a champ.
That's a good image.
Yeah. Just the track lines of so many moments in your past of your arm. Like suffering is looking at like an addict's arm where like there's not even any more veins to tap into. Like you can't even get high anymore. Like you don't know what life is outside of the pain because you know it so well. And that's the same thing you see in like a metaphorical, painful way is that drug addict where they're literally like ravaging all over their body, trying to find like literally in their toes, in their shins, anywhere. You see all these horrifically sad stories of addicts to where there is no length or degree of effort they're not willing to exert in order to get high, aka escape pain. Yeah, because that's what they're supplementing. I'm taking this drug to escape the thing that life is facilitating, which is pain. And I think you put it in a really, really perfect way because in its simplest form, pain is a sensory response to environmental things occurring. Yeah. And that's how you have to objectively look at it. Is like what is in your environment that is provoking you in a way to want to fucking run away. So what is the pain? Where did it come from? And ultimately, what business do you and I have talking about purpose or meaning if we have no idea how to even engage with pain? Yeah. You know, because that's the thing is, I think pain is understanding pain, and we've talked about this, is understanding pain and how one is to manage it in a way that is productive, because I mean everyone manages pain very successfully every night with a couple shots of this or a couple lines of this. You know, it's we just had Christmas, having that, literally putting a snowman up your nose, with cocaine. It's like no matter what you're enduring, there is an incredible amount of ways to manage pain. It's either successfully or not successfully. And I think when you look at sensory responses, I think what you and I are going to try to break down is pain is one of, if not the most complex things to understand, because it's so subjective. Yeah. Because how you experience pain and how I experience pain in the same scenario is utterly different. So to verbally joust about an idea that is totally subjective to the individual, it's hard. Yeah. But I think the bookends we can discuss is life's purpose is the acceptance and the acknowledgement of the suffering that is inevitable and enduring it and having the tools in place to navigate pain successfully head on. What is the other end of that spectrum? So what are the bookends are we dealing with? I think the other end it's suicide. That's a premature unplugging of a soul. That's what suffering is. That's the addict's arm that doesn't have any more veins to put a needle in. Yeah. They said, I'm so fucking exhausted of being so fucking exhausted, I don't even want to get high anymore. The high isn't even high anymore. And it's Oh man, that makes me makes me want to cry, man. Because I just had a conversation with one of the closest people in my life, and this time last year, I got a phone call about him wanting to take his life, and it doesn't matter about the details. It does and it doesn't, and it's just ironic because I just spent time with him this morning, physically seeing him and talking about purpose in life, and that level of lack of meaning and lack of purpose in life is so familiar to me, and I want more than anything to help facilitate a sincere, legitimate path to not building a structure of a life that is avoiding pain, and you're so successful that you forget what pain is. Yeah. Because I think that's the biggest mirage in life, is that successful people are exempt from pain. And I think the more success you have, the more painfully aware you are that being on the top of the mountain that we're all attempting to scale, the only thing up there is you, and you're alone. And the more successful you are, the more alone you are. And that's why the most successful people in the world kill themselves. Yeah. Because they didn't run away from pain. They ran towards success, but there's something unsolved. There's a mystery there. You know what I mean? Yeah. No, so what mysteries are we trying to sort out with managing pain, you know? So for you, what is the most significant thing that is in the compass of pain in your life existence? Are you drawn to categorizing pain as something that is it's a soul thing, or have you experienced physical things that you define pain as? Like, when you think about the spectrum of pain and how intricate it is in your life subjectively, like, where does your head go?
Well, I think it wants to go every time that flashes up to, the 10-year-old kid in me that has just run into a video game or something to find something to get away from it, right? It's that avoidance. It's that it's that belief that this thing is so scary that it's going to eat me alive if I face it. You know what I mean? And I think that, when I have stuff like that flare up, it's learning to call it out for what it is, right? It's seeing it for, this isn't as bad as I think it is. Because dude, I feel like everyone could say this, but the pain that I feel like I've had in my life is drastic, because, on the surface, you'd look at me as a kid growing up and you'd be like, oh man, he's a healthy, cute, privileged kid whose parents love him. But underneath, I was just terrified all the time about everything. And it just like, that closeness to pain was just there constantly.
What were you terrified of?
I was just terrified of who I was, like thinking I was some weak person or
anxiety ridden.
Yeah, and a big part of like getting away from it was using God in a way. It was like, like my method out of it was getting close to God and getting involved with stuff with the church and telling myself this truth that things are better than how they feel, right? So that it would, like, I would be that rung for me to cling on to get out of it, right?
It was your snorkel when you were
down it. It is. When you think of a God who loves you, who, the gospel message being something I accepted as real is so powerful, where it's just like, it can pull you out of these situations. It is powerful. But I think when it's used as any other method, whether it's a drug or anything else, it's still something you're using.
Yeah.
So regardless of how I accepted it as truth, it didn't change the fact that I was using this thing as this method, my rung to get out of the scary place I was in. You know what I mean?
Something really important I think you need to talk about and you need to highlight is your reference for pain. It's so interesting that you revert back to that child, and that you were suffering quietly. You had anxiety to the degree of associating that with being painful and claustrophobic in your own body. And what's so dangerous about that is when you're programming your adolescence into your young man adulthoodness, your pain is hidden. So you're programming yourself, and you're telling yourself that I have to project and present something that is not honest to where I'm at. And you're in an environment and you're having anxiety because you're having feelings of not knowing where to put them, not knowing where to navigate them. And there's a level of suffocation with keeping it minimized in almost in a schizophrenic way. There's this version of yourself telling yourself you're not allowed to feel this way. You're not allowed to be scared.
Sure.
And you obviously now, in growing up in kind of like an alpha male environment, it's like you weren't allowed to be an anxious little boy. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean.
And it's fascinating because I think that's the most dangerous thing, because the luxury addicts, cocaine addicts, meth heads, whatever drug you have that is like so visually evidently dictating your life to the degree you can't work, or if you're at work it's obvious that something's owning you, that level of a vice, there's something so convenient about that, because you have an excuse and it's obvious that there's something killing you. But if you're quietly suffering and no one knows about it, it only further sustains and protects that anxiety to keep going. And I think most people, especially in our Western overprivileged culture, we're all suffering quietly. And we're not allowed to feel it or think about it or talk about it, because we know we have first world problems, and first world problems aren't real problems. But that's the biggest lie, is it doesn't matter what you're going through. What matters is how is what you're going through affecting you. And it doesn't take much to ruin someone. And that's why most people that commit suicide are not in an American way glamorizing suicide, because that's where we're at. It's the ultimate attention getting thing to do when you're in a place of desperation, to say, I hate myself to the point of not being here anymore. But guess what? If you're fucking suicidal, no one's gonna know about it till it's too late. It's not glamorous. It's the worst. It's the most misrepresented thing in our culture these days, because we're attention whores. We want to do anything to get attention. What's the most powerful way to get attention? I'm gonna kill myself. I'm not gonna be here anymore. Therefore, you better say hi before I'm gone. Pretty much. But guess what? The people who are really suicidal, you never get that chance to say goodbye.
You know, I think with first world problems comes first world vices too. And I think that. And I think that as, you know, as we are kind of these guinea pigs going through, you know, all this tech shit that's around us all the time, I think that we don't see them for what they are. And I think that, you know, that we don't realize how we use things and our method behind it, and
not honest about it.
And it stems back to this pain that we don't know how to deal with. So like, in not knowing what's going on inside of us and how we're using things to make that feeling go away, they become these vices that we don't even realize that we constantly use, because there's so many of them. I mean, good Lord, it's a grocery store full of vices. That's where we're at now. And what ends up happening is you're so detached from yourself spiritually and what's going on the inside, that like this is just the manifestation of what's going on, where you get into these depressive episodes and stuff like that, where, you know, I realize there is depression and stuff like that, where people actually do have chemical disorders and things going on where they need help. But I feel like a majority of our problem comes from the fact that we have no idea what's going on in here. And when you don't, that's what happens, is it becomes this place of torment. You don't want to be inside here. You're doing everything in your power to be inside here. So what are you going to do? Like this mind thing that we were talking about last time, it's a quote that's, I don't know who said it, but it's a horrible slave master to have. It's a beautiful thing to have your mind in this healthy way, but when it's something that you're running from, this thing, it is the worst slave master you can have. And that's what happens, and that's what we're talking about, is like, how do you learn to change what's going on in you where you're not controlled by the pain? Because the problem is, it's one or two things. You're either trying to manage it and avoid it in a way where you're using anything around you like a crazy person, just been like, give me that, this will heal me, give me that, this will heal me, and it's not doing anything. So you grab the next thing hoping that it's not doing anything, to the point where it's just like, okay, nothing's going to do anything, there's something wrong with me. But it's like, do you even know who you are to even ask that? Like, you know what I mean? And I think that's the call here, is the matter of like, when we have pain in our lives, it is the ultimate motivator, right? It's the ultimate. There's nothing that motivates you more of just like, you know, you go to the doctor and he's like, dude, if you don't change your diet here, you're gonna be a diabetic. You're gonna have to stick a needle in your arm every day, right? Like, you need to change your ways. You're like, shit, this has gotten so bad, I gotta change it, right? But we're all living life based on this thing we don't want. That's a horrible way to live. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't live my life saying I don't want to be an asshole. Mm-hmm. I'm going to say like, no, I want to be me. I want to be this dude who's full of love, peace, and joy, where we could come and sit together. And you're like, dude, like, I just love being around Ryan. Not because I care what you think, but because that's who I am. And the problem is like, for me, talking about my painful situation growing up is learning that how caught up you can get in stuff, like, especially with like my relationship with my dad. It was something where I had to learn where like I need to be who I am apart from what this dude thinks of me, all right? Especially working for him, to the point where it helped me detach in this way I needed to, so that I could be me and learn to realize, man, it's not so scary, you know? It's not so scary to be so caught up that like I believed what this dude believed about me. You know what I mean? And all that to say is a matter of like, how do you get to a place where you can be free enough where you're not scared of the pain that arises in your life, because you know that's part of life. And the suffering that comes in life is inevitable. We're all going to face it. We can't just close our eyes and pretend it's not going to happen. It's going to happen. There are bad things down the road. There could be really close down the road or a long ways down the road. But we need to live our life like it's coming down the road and be prepared. I mean, right? That's what you're talking about with pain management. Mm-hmm. That's what we need to do. And the problem is we're completely unprepared and reacting when shit hits the fan. And that's when we're in the drugstore just grabbing a drug, trying to make it go away. And it's a really, really poor way of trying to think of like, oh, so do you expect success in life living that way? Because no one's going to be successful. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it's like, can we just like try to make this way of living, to like shine a light on it and say, hey, why do we think this is going to work? It is not going to work. Right?
Yeah. It's, oh man, there's so much to unpack. That was so intense, dude. It's you hit on so many points, and the pain management element, I think, the most impact we can have is to not, in this conversation, you and I subjectively, is to not tiptoe around the ideas that are objective to pain, but it's how do we translate our own individual uniqueness relationship with pain and basically put it out here in a little nudist colony of feelings, you know what I mean? And it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing, but I think secretly we all want to be in a nudist colony and feel beautiful, quote unquote. And the fear there being, obviously, do I look good naked? I fucking hope so. Anyways, back to pain. When I'm hearing you talk, and it's very telling when you associate that young version of yourself with the anxiety, and then that transitions into the next season of life, being a young man under the wings of a father. And you and I both know the infinite impact a father has on the young molding of a man's mind. And I would argue it is the most impactful, whether it's the lack of a father and what that says to you, that you don't matter because your living father said, and I'm not going to fucking talk objectively. I'll talk about myself independently. My struggle with my father is not necessarily what he did and what I felt in the moments when he was physically there. I think the hardest thing I have to live with as a grown-ass man that has attempted to forgive him at one point when I called him, and I alluded to that a couple weeks ago, is, and this is my quiet anxiety I get to live with that no one gets to see, and I have to pretend it's not happening, and I'm fucking good at it. And I pretend to the point of not even remembering that I do. But I when I sit quietly and I ask myself, why do I do what I do? I often come back to the home base of pain for me is recognizing that I'm starving for love. I'm starving to have meaning and identity. But guess what? My dad, and I in no way am I wanting to talk about him negatively or put him on blast in a finger pointing way. I'm just giving reference for why I am the way I am. I get to live with, I don't have to, I get to consciously deal with the pain of knowing that because of his addictions and his inability to be a husband and a father, and getting my mom away from him, and realizing that the best thing for my life to succeed was to physically get away from him, physically get my mom away from him, and let him dig his grave by himself with his addictions. And knowing that I was carving safety for my mom to get away, and trying to empower her and encourage her that, guess what? Like, the church doesn't give a fuck about you pretending to be a positive, powerful woman of blind commitment to this man who was once on God's payroll. Yeah. Like, you need to find meaning and significance for yourself independent of this chaos. And knowing that I was doing that for her and doing it for me, I'm signing up for the rest of my life saying that, and realizing that my dad consciously chose to not want to, I didn't matter enough to my dad to be a part of his life anymore. My dad's alive. I don't know where he's living. I don't know what he's doing. But my dad, and I think a lot of guys can relate to this, is my dad's alive, and he chose to go fucking escape his pain that he hasn't dealt with. Yeah. And in the meantime, he says, hey, son, you're not fucking worth it. I don't want to get clean. I don't want to fix my addictions. I don't want to be sane and healthy. You don't matter. So go fucking kumbaya and pretend that there's a father figure in the sky that says, hey, Slugger, you're my boy. You're my boy, Blue. Your physical dad here didn't do a good job, but it's okay. I'm here and I love you. Bro, I've written many a letter to you, and you have yet to respond. I say that jokingly, obviously. And then I feel like getting the cancer was, a real bullshit way for God to say, hey, your dad didn't finish the job, and I don't have the balls to have you just get hit by a car. Like, I want you to die slowly. And so my point being, it's not like to get off on a tangent of being a victim. I'm only trying to paint a picture of compassion and empathy for all the women and men who have mothers and fathers who have abandoned them because they haven't had pain. They've had so much pain that they couldn't deal with it, that the idea of being a dad or idea of being a mom and keeping a baby was not acceptable. I had to give this baby up for adoption because I don't know how to deal with my pain management. Yeah. So that's why it's so fucking important to press into this stuff. So when you say the sequence of your pain as an anxious child, then transitioning, the other bookend of pain you referenced is learning to detach from your father's protection under his wing and what he projected and what you felt verbally and non-verbally he was saying you are. It's so interesting you say that, because I was reading something you wrote from some writings you're compiling about pain, and the analogy you gave about pain was entering into a storm, and it was so beautiful, and somehow you got to get it to the public because it's so fucking beautiful and powerful.
All right, I'll read it.
But what's so interesting is, as you read, I'm going to ask you a question at the end of it. Oh. And no pressure, but there's something very specific that I just gave reference to my relationship with my father and that abandonment feeling I have to deal with every day, and saying that, no, I fucking matter, world. I really matter. My dad doesn't think so, but I'm going to pretend I do, So how do you break free of that maternal love or lack thereof and say, I get to carve out what meaning is and purpose is for my life, and it doesn't fucking matter what anyone thinks. It matters what I think and what I sustain in my own mind. So
I gotcha.
Continue. Let's hear it.
All right.
Please.
All right. So this is a little excerpt from a chapter I'm writing on pain. So the excerpt's called Facing the Tornado. So how do you learn to accept the pain? Oh, shoot. Hold on one second. So how do you learn to accept the pain? One of the hardest things in life is confronting your pain, not just out of difficulty, but out of elusiveness. Even if you find the bravery, it takes time. The inward journey to discover the root of your suffering is a unique experience, and everyone's journey will look different. To start, the goal is to develop a mindset that pain is an inevitable part of life, but we don't have to stay in it. We have an open invitation to let the healing begin at any moment. We cannot escape the touch of pain, but we can live without the suffering. We can grow, adapt, change, strengthen, and transform. So how does the change begin? It begins with honest questions, deep questions, and open questions. Questions like, why is life so hard for me? How do I make these feelings go away? Why do I react like that? Will I ever get away from this dark cloud? Why do I care so much about what this person thinks? When will I finally catch a break? Why don't people treat me with respect? Will God ever answer my prayer? How come I can't stop? Let the underlying questions wash over you and observe them as curiously as possible. Do not seek to judge or bury them. Let them remain in your focus with an inquisitive spirit. These questions are the invitation to the rabbit hole that will lead you to the root of your suffering. It sounds simple when laid out like this, but for the person in suffering, it is quite hard to navigate the questions. The questions prompt the pain to arise and therefore are default mechanisms for making the pain go away. There has to be a deep level of commitment to continue on the healing path. A decision needs to be made through the awareness of the pain that you will no longer tolerate your life apart from being torn apart. Let's go back to the idea of pain I talked about earlier as a dark storm. To help put it in perspective, the pain in our life is the storm, and the suffering is what comes out of the storm: rain, winds, lightning, or any devastating effects. This is what it felt like for me walking the path of healing to face the storm head on. I remember walking down a path engulfed in lightning and deafening thunder. The rain was coming down sideways. The darkness was heavy, yet I could still faintly see the path in front of me. The storm was massive and encompassed nearly the whole sky, but I could see the light peeking through the distance. The dirt path was soaked, and the trees of the forest blowing frantically. I was worried about getting hit by a branch or even worse, a tree itself, but I committed when I walked the path that I was going to press on regardless of what it looked like. With each step, I tapped into my inner determination. Was this storm going to break me, or would I persevere? I had to persevere. Through the storms I marched, soaked, cold, and afraid. The closer I came to the ridge in the distance, the more the howling wind pushed me back. With my head down, I told myself, you have to beat this storm or we'll continue to beat you. I thought of my family and the life I wanted to have. Where is it? I thought of my family and the life I wanted to have and took another step forward. I wanted to give in to the fear, but I realized I wanted freedom, love, joy, and peace more. I got to the ridge and was able to glance over the top. The trees were all blown over and the debris shooting right off the top of the hill. The darkness was even thicker and the path was nearly gone. Then I saw it, and the strokes of lightning, it was there dancing in the field, a cyclone of wind ripping apart the forest around me. This was it, the monster I had been running from. This was the terror that had always been lurking in the distance. This is what I had been running from, always checking. This was the source of so much of my fear, guilt, and shame. I had found it, and now what? Do I run away? Do I stand my ground? Do I march toward it? I knew I needed to keep going. I crawled into its path, planted my feet, and stood with arms raised, closing my eyes as the twister came crashing down. A silence fell over me. I opened my eyes and could see inside the vortex. The tornado had no power over me. I was planted in the same spot. I had not moved an inch. The world around me still looked like something out of my worst nightmare, but it was a facade, an illusion. In the middle of the storm, I realized that I had been running from something my whole life that had no real power over me. I had been the one giving it all the power.
Fuck.
And that's part of the chapter.
It's so good, man. and here's where my I'm left lingering, and I need to ask, not just on a personal level, but I think it's so important. What is the tornado? Because it's conveniently not in there. That's the thing we can do, especially because obviously I know you're insanely passionate about writing, and that's something we share. And I'm not as good or as formulating my thoughts in the fluid, flowing stream of consciousness that you write. Like I have to just shotgun shit in a poem because I can't think long enough about things. I just got to write things short. So my question for you is, and what I felt and what I need to know and what I'm feeling here is I'm in the forest with you, bro. I feel the tornado. I feel the darkness. I feel the suffocation. I feel the anxiety. But I think everyone can relate to that to some degree in their own subjective experience. But I think what really matters, and what matters to me personally, because I love you, and what matters for whoever's going to hear this, is we need to know what your tornado is, because that's what's going to bring this, what you just read, that's what's going to make it real, you know? Sure. And I think from what you're saying, there is a sequence of going through the storm as a child, feeling the anxiety, and becoming a man, and then transitioning to talking about the power that your father had projected onto you of what you are, and realizing that that is not what you are to a degree. Is there a connection there? And I'm not just saying that to mirror my daddy issues. I'm saying, is there a relationship there that is in the tornado, amongst other things? Obviously, it's a culmination of a lot of things that's in that tornado for you.
Sure.
But what's the tornado, man?
Well, I wrote that, like 2 years ago. But for me in writing that, it was realizing how much I have created my own suffering. And it was this thing that I allowed to be present in my life, and just said, this is kind of the way it is. I'll just avoid that thing, kind of like what we're talking about, right? It was that thing in the distance where as long as I don't go up over that hill, man, I'm good, right? I know that's there. I know it's there. I'm going to do everything I can not to. I'm going to pretend. I'm going to find things that are make me forget about it, right? Even though I know that it's there and it's something that needs to be seen and dealt with. So for me, it's just the mix of so much of what made me this terrified person. And my terror and fear stemmed down to, I guess, this belief in who I was, and how messed up or unworthy, or, you know, how, I guess it was this feeling of everything I feared about myself being true, is what it was. You know, this weak person who never break these habits, or, you know, this person who, you know, is just never going to get past, you know, or is always going to be running from something. And I think talking about that was learning that, you know, for me, it came to a head when, you know, I started going through my faith, and that all started to fall apart, and realizing how much I didn't know any of these answers, who I was, or any of these things like that, and how much I was running from something. And then talking about that, it's just making that decision where it's like, you know what, all I really need to do is step out courageously to listen to these questions that are there, that if I could just be still and be present and be with them and just hear them and see what they're trying to tell me, that's all you really need to do, and it points you in that direction. And the thing that's crazy is, like, that tornado is terrifying because it keeps you from doing that. You're like, no, you don't want to do that. That's a freaking tornado over there, right? You know, you're doing everything you can to stay the hell away from it, build your bunker. Like, that's what you want to do. And instead you're like, well, it comes down to a choice in life. Do you want to build your bunker, or do you want to see what's going on with this freaking tornado that you feel like is there, right? And so for me, that's kind of what it was. It was a matter of, like, I guess it came to this realization of, and bringing it back to pain. Pain is either something we learn to figure out and manage in a way that we're not scared of it. We realize it's there. It's an inevitable part of life. You know, it doesn't have to be this place of suffering. And for me, it was just like, you know, it's either going to go one or two ways, like what you're talking about with your dad, right? That's the dude who can't face the tornado. Do you want to be that dude? And I've had so many examples around me in my life of seeing people do that. And I just was like, you know what? I've seen the harm that caused. We don't have to go any further than this table. And it's a matter of, like, I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be that person. So once you realize that, you're just like, yeah, you know what? Screw this, man. Because it's either I'm going to figure this shit out and help make things better, or I'm just going to be continuing the pain cycle.
Yeah.
And so it's a matter of, you just realize this is what you have to do, and you take one step in front of the next. And it sucks trying to figure it all out. But it's just, you realize how necessary it is, because behind it is everything you want. You cannot live a whole life with that tornado just running wild in the distance. It's always that thing over your shoulder. You know what I mean? So I guess that's the whole point of it, is realizing who wants to live a life like that. I don't feel like anybody does.
No. I think what I loved about your imagery is the tornado. It's the perfect thing to be a symbolism of pain, because it's cumulative. Weather patterns start to conflict, and there is a toilet flushing drain of wind. Clearly, I'm a meteorologist, because I can't even say meteorologist, right? This thing starts to develop and pick up momentum, and before you know it, it's tearing through Kansas City and annihilating Toto and Dorothy, and she has some fuck up acid dream about munchkins, and it's scary. It's scary how quickly a tornado will dictate and drown you, because it doesn't become a tornado immediately. It accumulates, and that's what I kind of seeing in your writing, is your realization of, I'm attached to the tornado. I see it in the distance, but just because it's in the distance doesn't mean I'm safe. And if I stay in the forest, clearly the rain's coming down sideways. I'm suffocating. I'm dying in this forest, and there's just darkness here. So I either stay here and slowly die, or I go see, fuck it, what's in the tornado? Why not? Why not? Yeah. You know, and you did that. You had the courage to go out and stand in the eye of the storm where there's stillness. And I am a meteorologist, because technically there is stillness inside of the eye of the storm. So, fact check me. I honestly don't know if there is or not. Is there?
Oh, I don't know. I just keep thinking of Twister, where they're like floating.
Yeah. I keep thinking of Sharknado. All I'm thinking about right now is, I'm like, how do I talk about pain? All I'm seeing is like sharks and chainsaws. And anyways, back to pain. ADHD. Thank you. Medication. I think it's beautiful that you, and that's why I'm so honored to be connected to you and to be doing this, is because you are a life lived of having entered it. And at the end, you stood there and you felt it. On the other side, you opened your eyes, and in that Wizard of Oz-esque way, like, Dorothy wakes up and she realizes, like, I've always had the power to be in a framework of, because Wizard of Oz is like a crazy acid trip of reality. Yeah. Like, she has a dream. It's a synthetic reality, and there's a ton of symbolism. And then she wakes up because she's told, hey, you've had the power all along to be in that home. So where's that home? Where's that freedom? Where's that homelessness that we all live with every day in our souls? We're trying to find home, a place of peace and refuge, and just a state of calmness, you know? And that's what it means to escape pain, is to feel peace. So how do you wake up from the acid trip that life is and feel and realize that there is no chaos? It's a self-inflicted chaos. I created a tornado, and I am that Wizard of Oz, like the in it, like he's behind the curtain. Yeah. Like he's not, there is no craziness. There's just a weird dude with curly blonde hair back there. He's creating it all. Yeah. And I think that's symbolism for our subconscious mind, not trusting and believing that there is a life to be lived if you do enter into chaos. So I think there is a self-sabotaging element that we all have with pain that says, we're literally hardwired to avoid pain. It's not fair. Yeah. It's not fair. But guess what? If you have the capacity to just tiptoe in a very much 2 steps forward, 73 steps back, it feels like, with entering and flirting with pain, it is literally muscle. Yeah. You flex that shit, you get under the weight, you realize, I can lift a little more next week if I lift this amount this week. Yeah. And pain management is the exact parallel to the gym, not just because I'm a fucking dude, bro, who likes the weights, but it's always the perfect analogy, and that's not gender specific, but it's very much perfect, because your mind is a muscle. Pain management is a muscle, and you would be fucking amazed. And I just got done reading David Goggins' book.
I knew you would. I knew you were going to say David Goggins, because you were sounding like David Goggins.
Well, yeah, I mean, I literally just finished it.
He's an awesome dude, man.
It's inhuman what he did, and 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 I'm not proud to say it, but I relate to him a lot with that sick romance with pain and going through my eating disorder. Like, I fell in love with the pain I was inflicting on myself, the amount of days I could go without eating, the amount of times I could make myself throw up and know that I was about to die. Like, it felt good. The pain felt good to know that I could endure it. Yeah. And I have a weird connection to like the idea of a SEAL, because I was skin and bones, and I got sent to like one of the only male clinics for guys with eating disorders, because it's such a societally untalked about issue, and it's such a massively well-kept secret that guys deal with eating disorders, because it stems from identity, and our culture says your physical identity is your identity. And if you don't upkeep that and have a fucking 3% body fat and X amount of muscle on your frame, then you're meaningless. Yeah. And so going there, and one of the psychologists that I dealt with, he's like, you actually have a superpower inside of you. You can choose to endure pain on a level that most humans can't. Like, throwing up is one of the worst things in the world to people, and I chose to do it fucking a million times a day just cause. And I didn't eat, and I felt the pain of not eating just cause. And I became addicted to that power that it gave me. It's this really weird reverse psychology. And again, I didn't know what I was doing at the time, but and again, in the same way David Goggins said, don't do what I did. Like, don't fucking get an eating disorder, for the love of God. Like, not healthy. I'm not promoting it. Yeah. You know what I mean? But I'm just saying it's not understanding the spectrums of how to deal with pain. Like, there's an unhealthy way of dealing with it, to be addicted to it, to killing yourself in the Goggins way. Because to a degree, I felt it's an amazing story, but I feel like he uses pain as an idol to where he escapes reality in such a monk-like way that's inhuman. Yeah. And again, I'm not him. I don't know his life. Like, I think he's trying to do positive shit, so I'm not saying anything negative, but I think the goal should always be to find balance in life. It should always be to find balance. And you can, in an imbalanced way, be pressing into pain as a trophy. You know what I mean? Yeah. In that same way that there's a romanticizing of suicide. It's like, how do we understand pain? How do we actually use it as a tool? So we've talked about the sequence of acknowledging what pain is. There's spiritual, physical, emotional, mental pain, all these spectrums. Your personal story, my personal story. So it's like, where do you go from there? How do you start to manage and use pain as a tool and not run away from it? So how do you personally develop your relationship with it day to day, and how are you actively pressing into the tornado?
I gotcha. I think part of your answer kind of ties in that chapter I read. I talk about idolatry, kind of, because I think it taps into kind of what we're talking about. Like, you're just talking about how pain is an idol. Makes me want to read what David Foster Wallace said. I'll just read it real quick, just because I think it really ties into your question.
Game changer, bro.
So this is part of one of his commencement addresses called "This Is Water," I think is what it's called. It says, in the day-to-day trenches of adult life, there's actually no such thing as atheism. There's no such thing as not worshiping. Everybody worships. The only choice we get is what to worship. And an outstanding reason for choosing some sort of God or some spiritual type thing to worship, be it JC, Jesus Christ, or Allah, be it Yahweh, or the wicked mother goddess, or the Four Noble Truths, or the infrangible set of ethical principles. It is pretty much anything else you worship will eat you alive. If you worship money and things, if they're where you tap real meaning in life, then you will never have enough. So hold on 1 second. It's really hard to read this on here. Hold on. Yeah, if you worship money and things, if they're where you tap real meaning in life, then you will never have enough. Never feel you have enough. It's the truth. Worship your own body and beauty and sexual allure, and you will always feel ugly. And when time and age start showing, you will die a million deaths before they finally plant you. On one level, we all know this stuff already. It's been codified as myths, proverbs, cliches, bromides, I don't know, epigrams, parables, the skeleton of every great story. The trick is keeping the truth up front in the daily consciousness. Worship power, you will feel weak and afraid, and you will need ever more power over others to keep the fear at bay. Worship your own intellect, being seen as smart. You will end up feeling stupid, a fraud, always on the fringe of being found out, and so on. Look, the insidious thing about these forms of worship is not that they're evil or sinful, it's that they're unconscious. They're default settings. They're the kind of worship You just gradually slip into day after day getting more and more selective about what you see and how you measure value without ever being fully aware that that's what you're doing. And the world around you will not discourage you from operating on your default settings, because the world of men and money and power hums along quite nicely on the fuel of fear and contempt and frustration and craving and the worship of self. Our own present culture has harnessed these forces in ways that have yielded extraordinary wealth and comfort and personal freedom. The freedom to be lords of our own tiny skull-sized kingdoms, alone at the center of all creation. This kind of freedom has much to recommend it, but of course there are all different kinds of freedom, and the kind that is most precious you will not hear much talked about in the great outside world of winning and achieving and displaying. The really important kind of freedom involves attention and awareness and discipline and effort and being able to truly care about other people and to sacrifice for them over and over in a myriad of petty, little, unsexy ways every day. That is real freedom. The alternative is unconsciousness, the default setting, the rat race that continues continues the constant gnawing sense of having had and lost some infinite thing. But I think that's what it comes down to, too, is because we are worshipers, right? And in the sense that really paints this picture of who we are. And it's a matter of what do you look to? What is the thing that you're asking your salvation out of? If it's pain, like you're talking about, that Goggins could be like, I could get through this suck. Like I can endure this suck enough where it builds me up into knowing that I am this badass. Or, I've been blessed with a brilliant mind. Is that me now? Because it whittles down to like, that's a lot of our suffering, is because we're asking of this thing that is going to be our salvation, and it's something that makes me think of, back at in seminary, the first commandment of the Bible is not having any others before God, but that's kind of the brilliant thing, because I think it was Martin Luther said, in order to break the other 9, you have to broken the first one. And that's just a tremendous truth that I feel like we need to realize when it comes to life and suffering. It has a lot to do because we have accepted something in our lives as our salvation when it's never going to do that. And it brings us tremendous pain and suffering. We think having a family is going to bring it, or whatever it is. It's this unconscious way of living. And a part of figuring out pain is saying, how do you engage in life where you're actually aware and awake and conscious of what you're doing and how you're doing it and who you're doing it with? Because if we do want to break free from this kind of stuff, that's a big part of the journey, is to look inside yourself and ask these questions of like, what is that thing? What is this thing that is my salvation that is actually destroying me? Right?
Dude, it's so terrifying, man. And it's what I felt a lot from what you were saying is tied to the cancer I think are all quietly dealing with. Is we have an identity crisis, and in the same way Goggins is trying to tie his identity to an unbreakable man and not let anything break him metaphorically or physically, is a lot of what he explores, his physical boundaries as a human. There is a God idolatry fix that he's snorting a line of in that, and I think we are caught in an inevitable quicksand of flattering ourselves that there is an identity that I can acquire, a mask I can wear in the circus of life, that I can basically juggle for everyone to the degree that will have some level of deep meaning. And whatever level I can understand pain on my path to getting there and enduring it, like that's where purpose is found. But that's what's so scary, is like that's still a self-imposed identity. Like that's something you created. Is that you, or is it something you perceived in your life experience and said, this is the highest level of functioning, this identity, whether it's I put on the Jordan 11s lows and snakeskin, and I can dunk as a 5'11" white man, which still hasn't happened yet, but I'm still working on that identity. It's that image Nike's selling us. You can do it if you buy our products, because there's air in our shoes and there's pretty much clouds, which means you can fly. It's just science, bro. But that's what every company is doing, every brand is doing, is it's selling you another notch in your belt to further your identity crisis pain management. So being in this dialogue, in this conversation right now, is we're recognizing that. And you said it last week. It's like, am I a husband? Am I a father? Am I an iron worker? Am I the best in Portland? Like, what am I? And how do I navigate defining who that is? The scary thing is you are none of those. There's something inside of you, intangible, in your skin suit. And how do you unzip what's underneath the skin suit you unzip that you created? What's there? And I guess for you and us in this like midlife crisis as men, and figuring out who the fuck is under our skin suits, there's an infinite amount of fear, but our willingness to enter into the pain and the vulnerability that this is, because we're doing the most painful thing in theory, like as a human, is to be naked on a stage and open yourself. But it's only to hopefully, heal the wound that we might never feel, and that is, I'm not alone and we have a family, and we're attempting to be a couple dads and adopt the rest of the kids who want to be a part of the family. So for you, what's underneath your skin suit right now, and what are you doing to disconnect from the pain triggers that tell you that you need to be something other than what you are, and navigating your issues as a father and a husband and an iron worker and a friend and a brother? Like, what is pain telling you to do in all of these hats that you have to wear?
Sure.
And underneath it all, what do you think the highest level of being is underneath all of that?
Well, I think going back to what Wallace is saying, there is just a conscious person, right? I mean, just a matter of not letting the unconsciousness sweep over you and drown you to the point of where you're just a robot programmed by everything that's happened to you. Every person you've encountered, your mom, your dad. Are you just a robot of that? Are you acting out of your programming? Or are you going to consciously be aware of, like, whoa, where did this code come from? I need to change this shit, right? This is causing me a lot of grief right here. If I could be conscious enough to look at it and be like, man, I'm really like, when I get in a stressful environment, it causes this program to take over and I turn into an asshole. Oh my God, what's going on here, right? So I think a big part of it is learning to be aware of something like that. So when I look at myself, and to answer your question, under the skin suit, is I see this person who's doing the best he can to be this conscious person. And what that means is a matter of like, man, there's a part of me that is just totally fine, not even knowing now how to answer your question. Like, I just look at myself as I'm just another soul on this planet trying to figure out like what makes me tick, what's me, what's not me, like what makes me different from you, are we different, like all these things, right? Because there's this weird thing where it's like, yeah, I'm my own individual little person right here, but I'm also not, I'm also a part of something so big that you can't even comprehend, right? But to go back to learning how to face pain, I think a big part of it is not only seeking to understand that programming, and when that programming kicks into gear and when your light goes off because you're not conscious anymore, of trying to figure out why does that happen, you know what I mean? And then I think along the ways you learn about all these tools and stuff to help kind of get you on that path. And I think a big part of like what even led me to face the tornado, since we talked about that, is one, facing the truth that if I didn't, my life's not going to be a very well-lived life. That's one. Two is realizing that, this is going to suck, figuring all this stuff out, but what other choice do I have? So you embrace the suck in David Goggins' words, I guess, in that sense. And then I think a big part of like what really helped me too is, since a lot of my hangups came from, you know, my dad and certain things, is learning to grieve. And I say that in a way because
so important
with pain, I think that's a big part of life, because grieving is something we tend to only do if there's a death or something like that. That's something that we'll give someone a grieving book when they lost a parent or something. Yeah. But what about the grieving you need to do for your dad who's alive that isn't there? The dad you never had, that you've wanted and needed, that you didn't have.
Let me know when you figure it out. Yeah.
Because if we can learn to grieve that, and like you grieve in a sense that where it opens you up to this level of acceptance at the end of it, because regardless of how you go through the stages or what order you want to talk about, but you end up with this peaceful acceptance and gratitude in this way of like you could see the grand picture of things. And I think that's a big part of helping break free of the pain, is like when I can look at my family and my father, and I could see his life, and I could see his heart, and I could see who he is in a way that helps me break free of all the things I want to project on him. Because that's the one thing we do with pain, is we tend to project it and we don't even realize it.
No ownership.
Yeah, it's just like, you know, it's like, oh, he does this and that, you know, and it's just not, it's just me projecting what I feel on him, and in order to justify why it's okay to feel that way, and why we could do that all day long, it's just going to keep you stuck.
Yeah.
And so that's a big part of it, is learning, like, you know what? There's things in life where you got the short end of the stick. They're either going to hold you hostage, or they're going to make you. Yeah. They're going to make you to the point where you're like, dude, you were able to come free from that. And there's plenty of people that have all these great testimonies of how they've broken free and stuff like that. But the thing about it is, like, we want to be big enough and conscious enough to figure that stuff out, so they're fuel to keep us going and to make us stronger. Because that's what you want. That's what we want. Like, you want to be the best father you can be, to help your daughter be free and, you know, not have to deal with your hang-ups where, you know, she's thinking,
sorry ahead of time.
You know, and that's what I want for my kids, because I know I'm still trying to figure it out. God, you just have to talk to my wife to understand that. You know what I mean? She could listen to this, probably cringing at certain things I'm saying, like, well, you ain't doing that at home, you know, where it's just, you know, and that's.
But that's what's so powerful, is you're honest about it.
Yeah,
and
but
you're accepting of it, which gives you the platform to then grow from it.
And
you're not running away from it and saying, well, she just doesn't understand. Yeah. You're saying, no, she fucking gets it. And that's why I'm here to acknowledge it and deal with it and try to grow and take ownership of my shit.
And that's what, and it's owning that, right? I mean, that's what all I want to do is own it, in the sense of, like, I don't want to project my shit on her anymore. Like, I want to figure it out where I'm part of her path of healing. That's what I told her. Like, that's what I want to do. But it's still hard, because that code that kicks in when I feel like she is treating me like crap, or, you know, just completely oblivious to my feelings or what I am. That's when the code kicks in, and then it turns into this dude, and then the conscious light goes off. And then it takes her back to, like, her bad beliefs of who I am and everything else, right? And
which unfortunately she has evidence of.
Exactly.
And that's what's so hard. Yeah, the coding is never wrong. Is we want to look at people and not take ownership of the issues and say, it's not my fault. And it's like, you think they fucking got there from non-legitimate reasons? Like, they have data.
Yeah.
They're basing their response to you off of moments that happened.
Exactly. Yeah. And that helps you validate how they're feeling. Because it's easy to just be like, oh, you shouldn't feel that way. The word shouldn't is a really dangerous ass word for our lives.
Minimizing.
Yeah. But no, it's just for, like, I shouldn't feel that way. Yeah. They shouldn't feel that way. I should have done this. I should have. It's the epitome of unaccepting your reality. You're just saying, oh, I know it should be better, and I'm going to put it out this way. And it's just this rabbit hole of just toxic shit. Yeah. And that, you know, and
I need to say something. What I love about your mind is you always, as we get close to wrapping this up, is you always, I don't even think it's intentional. Your mind is so sequenced. And I'm so jealous of how you can process a thought from the beginning to the end, because here I am like schizophrenically talking about acid trips and Wizard of Oz and snorting snowmen. Like, I don't even know what the fuck I'm even doing. I'm just a hype man. I'm just pumped to be the Robin to your Batman. And what's so cool is, in concluding these thoughts, you bring it to the most important point of pain that we never even give ourselves a chance to even process. Because you and I could sit here all day and talk about pain, and everyone's like, yep, yep, keep it going, preach it, yep, Like there's an infinite amount of agreement with what pain does to us. But what's so unfortunate is so few of us get to the other side of pain. So few of us look at the blueprints of our own souls and say, how the fuck do I build the bridge to the peace that's the other side of the tornado?
Yeah.
Because there is no going around it. There is a going through it. So how do we look at the building prints? How do we construct this path to this subjective experience you're experiencing as an individual, you alone? Your bridge to finding peace and processing all the pain is going to be unique to you. And that's why it's so fucking hard. But what's so important, you said the most important thing, and the thing I'm just now realizing in the last couple of years of my life, and it's not a coincidence, I've had the most soul growth in the last couple of years of my life. And it's the only reason I was able to call my dad a few years ago, is because I finally got to the point of realizing it's okay to feel the pain and eventually grieve the pain. And we don't even deal with pain because we don't know how to deal with it. But more importantly, we don't know how to allow ourselves to process it healthily. And it is literally everything that happens in your life is absorbed physically, metaphysically, emotionally into your life. Your experiences are categorized up here in these computers that are giving you the data. And guess what? The shit doesn't go anywhere if you don't know how to digest it. The soul food you're sustaining your life of, if it is depressing, anxious, it's because yes, there is mental illness is a fucking real thing. And I was on the front lines of it most of my life watching my dad, and I know I absorbed some of that genetically. Sorry to everyone that's in my life. So mental illness will forever be something I advocate for because it's fucking real and it's ruining people. But in the same way, suicide is over glamorized. Mental illness is a fucking cop-out for a ton of fucking people. And I'm not going to say who is and isn't because that's not my job. I just observe it, and I know what real mental illness is. But I also know what it means to be a fucking immature human being who doesn't take ownership of your life. Yeah. And unfortunately, I see most of that. And coincidentally, America has the most anxious people because we're the most privileged. Most people don't have time to think about how they feel about shit. We're just fucking bored, and we have too many drugs and too many fucking, like you said, the grocery store of vices to escape the pain. Therefore, guess what? When you keep escaping your pain, you don't digest the soul food. If you don't throw in the fucking fiber that you need to digest it and actually push it out, you just ate 2 pounds of Velveeta fucking cheese and you're never gonna put it out. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you need some fucking probiotics to digest that Velveeta that life throws at you, because in the same way Velveeta is fucking glow in the dark cheese, and who even knows what it is? Pain is synthetic and self-imposed, and it's not real. So I'm not saying go eat a pound of Velveeta. I'm saying enter into it and realize that it's not fucking cheese. It's not real. You know what I mean? So the reason you can't digest it and it feels so toxic, and the reason why you wake up in the middle of the night sweating because you just ate that Velveeta, it's like because your body's like, what the fuck is happening? Like throw me a bone. I need some fiber, bro. At least sprout a couple bites of Dave's bread in there. You know what I mean? Whatever. Yeah. But we need to get to the point where we say it's okay to feel the pain. And I want to feel it to the extent that I process it healthily with the fiber that it takes to process it healthily, and then let it go. Yeah. Let it go and move on and recognize. And here's the most important part for me personally. The most important part of pain that I have learned from is it's the fucking gift of life. I'm sitting here because of the amount of pain I've not experienced, but chosen to enter into and think about. The amount of fucking time I've spent in my life thinking about shit in isolation about why I am the way I am, why I'm so fucking exhausting to myself, and why I know I exhaust people in my life. I'm like, I know I am. At least you don't have to be me, Yeah. But it's because I've spent so much time entering into that tornado and saying, why is that tornado even there? Is it even fucking real? And I keep coming to the conclusion that it's not real. And the reason why I'm sitting here, and I'm not happy about it, but the reason why when you asked me to do this and have this environment to discuss truth is because it felt like the worst idea in the world. You're like, bro, you want to go like have a tickle fight in a tornado? I'm like, fuck yeah, why not? Because I know those moments of verbally, independently and with other people, having the courage to sit down and talk about what fucking matters and why we know we don't know, and at least exploring and having the courage to, like, that's the fiber of life. That's what sustains your life, and saying it's okay to be anxious. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be suicidal. It's not, but unless you're honest about the fact that you are suicidal, and own it,
yeah,
you're not going to be here anymore, because that quiet isolation, that solitude will fucking win. Yeah. And the only way we can bring it's I read somewhere, and this stuck in my mind, the sequence 20-20-20. It said I read somewhere in 2020, every 20 seconds someone's going to commit suicide. That's the trajectory we're on. Oof. And that's fucking bad math. Yeah. And that's a big reason why I'm here. I'm like, we gotta fucking start talking about like the quiet desperation we all have.
Yeah.
Is it legitimate? Do you have good reasons to feel what you feel? It doesn't fucking matter. If you feel it, it's real. Yeah. And until you're honest about it and let yourself feel it and grieve it and then let it go, you'll realize that the tornado's not real. You know what I mean? Yeah. So how do we help each other connect and say it's not real?
Yeah, but that's it, dude. You will never know that until you are the one walking in it. Yeah. That's the thing. You could tell it all day long. It's as real as the effects that you make it have. You know what I mean? It's real
until it isn't.
Yeah.
And you'll never know until you get in there.
Yeah. It's like if I put goggles on your head like Ready Player One.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, why that shit doesn't really happen around. It's real for you. You're experiencing it. Same thing. So it's a balance of both. It's real, but it's not real. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And I think that's a part of it, dude, is learning, you know, the tornado for me is basically what happened to make me so addictive, you know, with everything that I had. Because, like, there's this pain that was there that I was incapable of dealing with. So that's how this addiction formed, right? And that's what a lot of us do is we may not be addicts, but we're very good at figuring out ways to numb and run and avoid. That's what we're great at. I mean, our culture is the best at it.
Absolutely.
We are. I mean, we're masters. We have so many different things. But,
you're welcome, world, for the example.
But I think that's the point you're making, dude. It's like we need to like just call it out for what it is and like realize, like we're trying to say, it's not as scary as it looks. We don't need to live in fear about this P word.
Yeah.
You know, that is lurking around, controlling us. You know, and that's a big call of it right now. Is just don't be afraid. Just try to figure out a way, whatever that step looks like. Talk to a counselor, talk to a friend, write about it. Yeah. Don't be afraid to sit with your thoughts. Listen to that soul trying to tell you what's going on inside. Like there's so many different ways. You know what I mean? The point is just to try different ones. Good Lord, I've seen like 5 or 6 different counselors trying to figure this shit out. You know, like it looks so different, and it's not this clear path. The path tweaks and turns and you're trying to figure it out. But the point being is that is owning the fact that if you don't, it will destroy you.
Absolutely.
You may survive, but you're never going to thrive.
Never.
And that's it, right? So I think we could wrap it up with that, dude. But you got to show your artwork for this week.
Oh, our artwork, dude. Yeah, Ryan and I collaborated on. So it's a reference to last week talking about the lactose intolerant astronauts that we are, because there is a very exploratory mindset with going into the unknown in the galaxy of the soul. I think in the same way till the moment humanity is done will forever be a mystery. The mind, the brutally low % of the mind we understand is terrifying. And I think the more we know, I think we're going to realize the more we don't know. In the same way, space is infinite and growing.
Sure.
It's scary, bro. So entering into the galaxy of the mind, and I'll never be fucking Elon Musk or have that kind of money to go explore physical space. So the best I can do is actually help facilitate some fucking space odysseys into the soul. So I wanted the referencing to be like, clearly the astronaut is giving the middle finger to the saber-tooth fucking I don't even know what the fuck I call it, the cyclops cow, and the pain is the splotches of the cow obviously hidden in it, and the saber-tooth cyclops cow is symbolizing clearly that animal is not real, thank God. Thank God. But it's the tornado that you're referencing. Is we create these monsters in our mind that are in the galaxies that we're trying to explore. And the reason why we don't go explore space is because there's saber-toothed fucking cyclops cows with acid milk they can spray on us. So, sweet baby Jesus, I'm so sorry, Ryan, that you're associated with me as a human. But the point is it's not in an angry way. You can't see the expression of the astronaut, but it's in a, I know you're there. I know that tornado's there. I'm going to fucking show up and I'm going to fight you. And at some point I'm going to realize that you're not real. So as I said last week, if you felt anything or were inspired by anything we talked about, please email Ryan at the email he's got. And Ryan and I would be super honored to hear your story, and we will send you this original piece of art to you, and as a gratitude expression, and we'll write something on the back how your story affected us. So at any time in the future weeks, if you feel impressed upon it, if someone hasn't written to us, we will send this to you. So thanks for enduring this conversation, the pain of it.
Yep. All right. Well, that's it. Any topic you want to talk about next week? Put you on the spot.
Sweet Jesus, Ryan.
It's cool if you don't have one in mind. I'm just fishing.
I think something I've thought about pain is, and it was a topic we talked about, is I think addiction. I think focusing on addiction. I think it's something we use to escape pain, but the complexity that addiction is. I think conversing about how do we dance with it. How do we dance with someone we know that has addiction? How do you enter into their chaos and be compassionately loving them? And is it time to not be a part of their chaos because you're drowning in theirs? So, I mean, there's a million topics with addiction, and a lot of people have been affected by it. And with the drug, narcotic, it's becoming an epidemic with every kind of drug that's available, to the point where grade schoolers are doing shit. It's crazy, man. It's crazy. So I think maybe just naturally, organically going into addiction.
Yeah. Sounds good to me. So next week, addiction.
Why not?
All right. Later. 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 Later.